everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me today, we have Josh Torres.
This week, I'm a true warrior of the Three Kingdoms.
And we have Chow Min Wu.
Where's the comic?
Yeah, and Adam had some personal conflict, so he will either be late or not show up. James, I assume, is sleeping in, or Ultimate Rating and Final Fantasy. He might also show up. We'll see. So starting out, it'll just be me, Josh, and Chow holding down the fort into the regular routine of our weekly podcast here at the Tetracast. So obviously last week, if you listened to last week's episode, that was our big holiday catch-up episode, getting back into the routine, talking about all the Game Award announcements, all of our RPG of the Year stuff, kind of back into the normalcy here, talking about January releases. We have a couple that we'll talk about here on this podcast. We have a couple later in the month and into early February, as you all know, is very, very packed for RPG releases. So very happy to kind of get back into the swing of things as we get into the cadence of talking about these RPG releases. So I'm excited to get back into this, and we'll kind of just hold down the fort while Adam and James may or may not show up later. So we'll go into that there. So the two games we're going to be talking about and focusing on for this podcast are going to be two new releases. One of them is Dynasty Warriors Origins, and we'll have a little bit of context to talk about that title. And then we'll talk about, of course, the new remaster for Tales of Grace's F. We talked about this slightly last week with our feature about, tales we'd like to see remastered with the new initiative for more regular remasters of that series. And then we're going to touch on a few other games, a lot of announcements of dates being dropped into late January, early February for like early access, demos, things like that. So that'll kind of be the cadence of this podcast. So starting out, we were going to talk about Tales of Graces first, but we might kind of earmark that conversation for later. We might touch on it a little bit as we go into our review up on the site. But Adam was the one that was our podcast presence for that remaster title, so he'll be able to speak to it kind of at length next week. So instead, we're going to open
the game, but I just haven't really touched it. I only touched like the original Wii version. I'm sure nobody
Nice.
probably played that one.
And then I know Josh has played the PS3 version because of course.
Yeah, I played the PS3 version, and I know some particulars that are remastered as well, but I haven't.
Yeah, and then this is going to sound a bit strange, but Adam and I were living together in college, roommates, when it came out on PS3. So he had played it originally, and I had kind of watched the whole game front to finish. So technically not played it, but has seen the whole game. But we'll start out here instead with Dynasty Warriors Origins. Now, this is a title that I know has gotten a lot of buzz up to its release. It's apparently done very well with its launch on, at least on Steam, with the Steam concurrent numbers. I know our RPG Site General Discord has had a lot of excitement for it. I know we have a lot of staff members here that have kind of had this game circled for a while and for different reasons. We're going to hand the microphone off over here to Josh, who has been kind of covering Dynasty Warriors for us. So actually, the way I say that is, before we started recording, I asked, were we going to cover this game? Like, I know we have a lot of people interested in this, but it's not something we've ever written a review for, is it? I'm not sure. So Josh, just kind of tee us up about like Dynasty Warriors Origins specifically. Obviously, you were excited for it regardless, but kind of the RPG slant for it, for the context of this podcast, and your time with it so far. And are you planning to review it?
Yeah, first, I am in the process of reviewing it. I'm almost done. I got my code relatively later than most other people, so that's why it's going up a bit late, but it's fine. I'm glad that I held off on it because I really wanted to explore the post-game stuff, and I'll get into that in a bit. But so yeah, at first when this was first revealed, I basically kind of grew up with Dynasty Warriors. I was first exposed to it through a demo disc of Dynasty Warriors 3 on the PS2. And I played the hell out of that demo. And after I picked up the full game on PS2, I became a lifelong fan of it. It's a series I adore. It has its ups and downs, but I love it to smithereens for what it tries to do. That large scale battlefield hack and slash gameplay. It's very in a really cool time period. It's always been a lot of fun to me. It's a lot of mindless action, but it gets difficult at some entries as well. And it's just it feels really good to play. So when Dynasty Warriors Origins was first revealed, I was thinking, okay, it's another Dynasty Warriors. It's cool that they're bringing it back, but it's probably not going to be an RPG or really in our scope. Dynasty Warriors 9, that was released about 6 years ago. It started flirting a little bit with RPG mechanics, but it was very light on it, and most importantly, just it was a really bad direction for this series. It was very poorly received. Um, it was like it tried this seamless open world thing, and battles would start immediately seamlessly through that open world, which is cool in concept, but um, it felt very empty, and the backgrounds and the stage design just were very flat and just very sparse, and it just there were a lot of problems with it, but it just in general it just wasn't really well structured. Um, so with Dynasty Warriors Origins, I was like, okay, cool, but I don't know if there's really an RPG.
And
So
I was just
I
also looking, like, of course, we covered Fire Emblem Warriors, we covered Hyrule Warriors. Even that, you could say, well, Zelda's not really an RPG, so what, but it kind of got grandfathered in. And then I guess I forgot
Dragon
about this.
Quest. Dragon Quest
Uh,
Heroes. Did we cover that too?
yeah,
I
I,
don't
I did Dragon
remember.
Quest Heroes. I did
And
those.
I did look that Zach back in 2017 did cover Warriors All Stars. I like, oh, I
Oh
forgot about
yeah,
this. So, but yeah,
yeah,
but I don't think we've ever covered a mainline entry before.
yeah. We did. I don't think we've done. We definitely done other Omega Force stuff. These set Three Hopes, Persona 5 Strikers,
Hmm.
the High Rule ones. So in between Dynasty Warriors 9 and now, Omega Force did a lot of growing and soul searching of both on third party licenses, Mosu games, and also just in general like what's a good next up. Like they did Wild Hearts, for example, which is not a Dynasty Warriors or Mosu game, whatever, but it is still that they developed interest that they were involved with that. Um, so yeah, and then I really didn't know until they released a demo for Dynasty Warriors Origins. And then once I got my hands on it, I saw the progression and a little bit of like the narrative presentation. I DM'd Adam and I'm like, I think we should cover Dynasty Warriors. I think it's RPG enough, especially, it's very more it leads to that aspect a lot more than previous entries for sure. Um, you know, uh unlike previous Dynasty Warriors games, for a lot of them, especially the earlier ones, they were more like there's a whole big cast of characters. Like the earliest ones were like 40 plus playable characters, um, and like an arcade like progression where you had like a handful of stages. You go through a person's story mode, and you do some battles, and then you get to like their ending and stuff. And depending on how relevant that person was in the conflict, they could only have like maybe up to like 3 to 4 stages, for example, if they weren't really that involved, but they're still playable. Or if they were there from the very beginning, you'd have like a whole saga with their story mode um, in there. But it was very light on like the RPG side of things. You could obtain weapons and items, but it wasn't really like you're leveling these characters up plus like a narrative RPG like presentation. Where usually when we're thinking about like games that fall under a scope, it's not just like, hey, is the combat have numbers and does number go up? We just think about also the narrative presentation as well. Like, does it like are they actually trying to like really go for like RPG sort of presentation as well? And a lot of games, especially in modern recent years, have adopted that model of more of like a more story like narrative like RPG esque presentation. Um, so the big change in Dynasty Warriors Origins, I think this is where the big divide is. For newcomers or more casual players of the Dynasty Warriors series and the more hardened series veterans that know what they like out of the series, the really big divide comes down to this shift in focus on the main character and the narrative presentation. Unlike what I detailed with those 40 plus playable characters and handful of stages, Dynasty Warriors Origins has one non customizable protagonist who is silent in the story, has like voiced battle cries in battle, um, but silent protagonist for the most part, and is an amnesiac. Um, and they have like their own original story of like trying to remember their memories and whatnot. But that's the only persistent playable character. The only other times you get to play another character is in some stages. You can bring a companion, and when you fill a bar up, you can temporarily control them, but they're not like someone that you permanently unlock and you can choose. You're always stuck with this main original character. Um, And that's kind of a big thing for series veterans. It's like a lot of people who like these games already really like that huge roster and picking their favorites out of their favorite faction, and playing and building them up and getting their awesome weapons and whatnot, and just thinking they're a cool character. You know, while in this one, it's taking a more it's an interesting approach because one of the big problems of past mainline Dynasty Warriors games is the way that the storytelling aspect, where if you really wanted to appreciate the story of them, you'd really have to be a fan of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, or whether you watched a film, a show, any other media adapted it, you read the novel, which is like how I got into Romance of the Three Kingdoms, is because I like Dynasty Warriors 3, and then from Dynasty Warriors, then I played some of the past ones, and of course all the future ones, and I really grew an appreciation of the Three Kingdoms. So I actually like read the original Romance of the Three Kingdoms novel because of Dynasty Warriors. I was like, this is such a cool thing that I want to learn more. I actually went and read it, and it was like, man,
Like, it's maybe a more basic example, but like I wouldn't have known who Joan of Arc was without Age of Empires 2, things like that.
yeah,
So
uh-huh.
so
Yeah.
it's
So
kind of
it's
cool
like
to hear
interesting
it
to
from a
like, yeah,
different perspective
yeah,
for a different
yeah.
area of the world.
Yeah, it's always cool to see, like, how video games can be that gateway to get you more interested, like, in past, history,
Yeah.
in that way.
In
Uh,
China, it basically talks about it like religiously. Like even if you're like in elementary school, they'll use like samples from the stories to like teach lessons and stuff. It's just
yeah, it's
huge.
very, very famous. Yeah. Um. So yeah, and now with Dicey Warriors Origins, they kind of, like I said earlier, you're only kind of getting fragments of the conflict through the eyes of like your playable characters in past titles. It was very like you saw, how this person was vaguely involved, but there wasn't like a big storytelling element. Sometimes there'll be like some minor scenes in between stage intermissions, or sometimes you'll have like characters full out monologue, like events that happened in between the last battle and this battle and what led up to it. But it was kind
Or
of
there's
weird,
like
but
gaps and like suddenly, oh,
yeah,
this character is dead, and you're like, how did they die?
yeah,
It's like, unless you know
exactly.
the novel, it's like you don't know how they die, right?
Yeah, and you kind of get some hints about it if you like play characters that like were related to them or near them. That no, but it's never like it was never that cohesive of an experience. Um, so Dynasty Warriors Origins is trying to write that course of like trying to get everyone on the same page and get like a basic understanding of the Romance of the Kingdom story through the eyes of this like generic third party wanderer. Like this main character, unfortunately, but I have to stress they don't really have much of a personality. They're more of a vessel of the player to, um, more of an excuse to like interact with every character, no matter what faction they are. Like there's a lot of these bond events in these games where like you talk to a character, you gain like a one-on-one cutscene with them. They sort of have a conversation with you, even though like they're mainly you hear their voices because you're silent. You can still select responses, and they'll talk about stuff with you, but they'll talk about themselves, how they see the world, their motivations, their reasons, their aspirations, etc. Just details that help characterize, like where they are in the conflict, how they feel the conflict about it, the conflict, or what they're planning. And it's like it's a way to characterize them in a way that wasn't really previously possible in the previous games, because the pace of those games were so quick. Because to kind of put into context here, those earlier games were always, the first stage was usually like the Yellow Turban Rebellion, and then like maybe there'll be another stage about the Yellow Turban Rebellion, but usually it'd be like a one stage affair, and then they're trying to uh, tell this whole span of the Three Kingdoms up to the Battle of Wuzhang Plains, which a lot of people like to cover it because that was like the big, near the end highlight battle that kind of closed out that era. But it's a wide span of history, and they're always kind of race towards that. Um, uh, from the Yellow Turban Rebellion to Wuzhang Plains. Then in later entries, when they introduced the Jin Dynasty, which came after the Three Kingdoms and became like the successor, the one to kind of quote unquote win that conflict. That you get even more beyond the Wuzhang Plains because of the Jin Dynasty edition, um, and so forth. So it like it always had this like weird accelerated pace, and there's never really any room for breaks, especially as they continually made more and more NPCs their own unique playable characters in later entries. So you got new unique designs. You have to design a moveset for them, and also all that work that had to be done. So you're inflating the roster size, and there's not really much breathing room for anyone to really express like, who are they? Like, you're like, this guy has a cool design. Like this Zhoutai guy has a cool armor. He has a quick stance, quick draw stance with his katana, and he's fucking cool. Do you know anything about him? He's a bodyguard, I think.
I think that's a problem with like going to that era is basically like all your favorite characters are probably dead by then. So it's like all these people you just don't have any attachment to it. Like it's kind of like the same problem in the novels, right? So
Yeah, and so while in Dynasty Warriors Origins, they start a little bit before the Yellow Turban conflict, and at the very end, it's like it goes up to the Battle of Chibi, and that's not that's still relatively early on in the Three Kingdoms divide. It's really setting up like the reason of why the land became divided to three. So you have these like the main figureheads between the Wei Wun Shu factions are Cao Cao, the Sun families composing of Sun Jian, Sun Se, and Sun Qian. Um, and then you had Liu Bei with Shu. They collaborated with joint alliances in earlier conflicts to Yellow Turban, to then against Dong Zhuo at Hulao Gate. And then after from then on, it kind of they were starting there were cracks being formed in between those three, and eventually the land became divided as they went off in their own directions because they formed different ideologies about how they wanted to conquer and unify the land. And they're very characterized by like Cao Cao with Wei was a lot of like power and supremacy, ruling through reason, but it was like cold logic almost. Shu is very much defined by benevolence, working for like the common man, looking out for the peasants, trying to get more of that angle. While the Sun family is about like honor, trust, family, and legacy. Yeah, and that aspect, and these are understandable reasons, while like of your own philosophy, but it's hard to carry like showcase that in the way that previous games did. Well, in this one, you get a really more intricate, intimate look of like how these key figures form these ideologies, um, and eventually form that splinter, and all the political intrigue and drama and conflict that defined that era. So that's why we're like that's why I understand why Omega Force went with this sort of like neutral third party, bland, generic protagonist angle. Over they needed someone as an excuse to be able to interact with all these characters who have different allegiances. And then eventually down the line, like as you're progressing through the story, you'll be forced to choose between one of the three factions, and then play their campaign. And then if you want to do the other factions, there's a story rewind feature, New Game Plus, where you can go down the other routes and explore them as well.
we're playing Fire
So
on the Free Houses.
yeah, exactly.
It's heavily inspired, right? I'm sure they probably took a lot
I
of
mean,
ideas
yeah,
from it.
I'm sure Three Houses is got inspired by the Romance of Three Kings for sure. Um, but so you have this one playable character, but that doesn't mean you're stuck to one weapon. But one of the cool things in Origins is that you have like a lot of weapon types, like 10 different weapon types or so. Um, and they do evolve the gameplay quite a bit. Like in a lot of mainline Dynasty Warriors games, it was always that standard like light attack string into heavy attack finisher. So you do like 3 light attacks into a strong finisher. That's like usually a wide sweeping attack. If you do 4 light attacks into heavy finisher, that's usually your launching move. And that was pretty universal, no matter what kind of weapon people were using. You always knew that 4 squares into 1 triangle was your launcher, no matter what weapon you have. So, it's cool that you saw the different animations for weapons, but they were all functionally, the same in terms of like move set. You just got to see like how different like their range was, and how different their animations are. Um, so this one really kind of went out of their way to distinguish that each different weapon type has its own unique gimmick. Not the only the the base sword default weapon type has that standard light attack string into heavy attack finisher. Everything else does not have that move set. Like the hula hoop rings, for example, that you throw out. How they work is you have your light attack string, but if you do a heavy attack, either in mid string or after an evade or whatnot, you'll throw out your rings, and then your rings will automatically come back to you after a certain amount of time. And depending on how you tossed it, it can have different times of when it comes back to you. Yeah, if they come back to you and you perfectly time your heavy attack button as you're retrieving them, it'll do like a follow up super attack, like a follow up like wide sweeping. That's really good for like clearing out crowds really fast. Um, and then there'll be like as you're raising your competency level with the rings, you'll gain like new abilities, new extensions, new move set, expanding the move set, and new ways to like throw out those new attacks that you perform when you retrieve the rings, which is not something that they've ever really done in terms of like how they vary up the gameplay. The gauntlets is when you press the heavy attack button either within a combo string or by itself or after an evade, you'll enter into like one of several stances. And once you get into a stance, you can do a follow up button to like access like one of the unique moves that it's only in that stance. So the gauntlets are very heavily stance based, and you unlock new stances the more you level up their competency um, levels with it. And like the crescent blade is like a big massive blade that gradually levels up when you clear crowds, and there are some abilities of the crescent blade that have additional effects once it's like leveled up a certain amount. So just little things like that that really um, spice up each individual weapon. They all have very clear like strengths and weaknesses, and in my opinion, this really makes it like the best moment to moment gameplay in the series because everything is so different. You can switch out like weapon types in mid battle too. So like if you want to like switch to you know a sword to a staff, for example, in mid combat, just pop open the pause menu and equip it, and then you have a staff now. Um, so it's a lot of fun in that regard. The best moments that they really nailed in this game is the when your large army is facing off against another large opposing force, and those armies collide into each other. It's literally like fucking hundreds upon hundreds of NPCs on your screen and bodies flying everywhere as they're just like all crashing like ocean waves into one another. And you're just this dude on the ground, like paving a way through that ocean of bodies with your blade, trying to survive out there. And it really nails that 1 versus 1,000 feel that Dynasty Warriors has always been striving for. Um, and it's like it looks beautiful. It runs beautifully. There even those moments on my PC. And it's just there's no other feeling like it uh, in games. Really, it's
My only analog that I personally have, unfortunately, is
Mhm.
Age of Calamity, where A, the scope is not that high, and B, it's only available on a baseline Switch. And it just
Yeah.
like not I just have to tell myself, this is not representative. This is a spin-off on a Switch. Like
Yeah.
but also when you were describing the combat and the weapon, like the way that they've kind of more specifically delineated between the weapon types, you like the combos are more bespoke to each type.
Yeah.
uh in my mind, having not played Dynasty Warriors outside of Hyrule Warriors, you were describing it, and in my mind I'm like, so kind of Monster Hunter-esque, like in terms of like the weapon build specificity. Is that a
I mean,
good comparison or not quite?
not really. It's way more arcadey. I mean, there are
Right.
particulars to each weapon, but it's not as like it's not as slow. It's not as intimate as Monster Hunter, where like
Hmm.
it's very deliberate. This one is like things are moving at lightning fast speed. It's a way more arcadey. I mean, it's a general in terms of like you can do different attacks with different weapons types, then yes, but it's also just like that's scoping it out so much that it could be like any of them.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a way more arcadey experience. And um I'm trying to think of like what's the best comparison, but it's like it's like you're the action games in general.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, let's see.
And also speaking just generically with one of the earlier
Mhm.
topics, like
Yeah,
something that I see, and I'm painting with a broad
yeah,
brush here, is that RPGs or RPG like games, s- some of them have like that blank slate avatar self insert sort of character, and then some
mhm,
have like a very deliberate, like you are Geralt, you are Commander
yeah,
Shepard sort of thing. And I think like this is gonna sound very like risque, but both are fine. Like
yeah,
sometimes you see like unfortunately loud minorities or whatever that insist that it has to be one way or the other. But like having a blank slate, the way you described it, well, not quite blank slate, but kind of bland, generic. Like that's not if it's in service of telling the story of these other historical characters. Like that seems to me like a really kind of smart and fitting implementation of the concept there. Um, so like the way you described it to me to the podcast here, like it sounds like it would be a really like it's worked out really well for telling the story of the Three Kingdoms.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing that like I guess older fans have to like kind of come to terms with where there's not I wouldn't say there's Dynasty Warriors 10. I think it's just like it's a different reframing
Mm.
of Dynasty Warriors and trying to like let people see like what Romance of the Three Kingdoms is all about, and it works. It works out well also from a newcomer's perspective because newcomers won't care that there's not 50 plus playable characters of people they don't know. They don't care if Sao Ren is there or not. They don't care if is this the one with Sima Yi in it. No, no, newcomers are not gonna care about that. There's like, hey, can I get into this and not know anything, and is it fun to play? And it's like, yes, you'll really like it. And then over time, when people get to know these newcomers, get to know the characters now, when they release like a proper mainline Dynasty Warriors 10 or something, they see, you know, um, Shahodun there. They're like, oh, that's the guy that got an eye patch in Origins. He was fucking badass. And you can play as him in this one. I want to get this. You know, that's kind of my thinking on it. On hey, get a new crowd of players, more familiar with the base story, get them attached to these characters, and then when you have more traditional mainline Dynasty Warriors experience with multiple playable characters, more people are willing to give that a shot now because they're more like accustomed to the story of the Three Kingdoms and they have characters that they like and they know. Um, that's my angle on it. Where
And I'm sitting
ultimately,
here like, oh yeah, I remember that guy from a long fallen dynasty that showed up in one mission. In one mission.
Uh, and in Origins as well, like my ultimate like assessment of it, and something I'm really trying to get across my reviews, like ultimately this is the game that Dynasty Warriors fans do not want, but this is the game that the series needs to stay alive and stay healthy. Um, because of that previous example that I'm telling you of, like, hey, people have familiarity now of this era,
Mm.
because of this gateway. It is like I think Origins is such a if they wanted this to serve as the gateway, I think they've really succeeded in spades here, and I think the numbers show for it. Like it not like even if you're just like going by like the Steam numbers, but I'm sure this out on consoles as well besides Switch. Um, and and I'm sure it's uh like succeeding in those platforms as well, and I think it really helps that they had a strong demo
Mm.
for this, where people weren't really they didn't know what to make of it, but since a lot of you say, "Hey, free demo, let's try it," I think a lot of people were like, "Holy shit, this game is really cool." Even though I've never played the Dynasty Warriors before, this demo, is really cool. You got more people on board to give it a shot, so demos work. Demos work, I think.
And
Um,
I think it's also like just a combination of a lot of little factors. Like
mhm,
it's a spin-off. It's
yeah.
it's well, I don't is spin-off the right word?
I
I
don't
don't know.
know
Like
how
I
you
don't
frame
think
it.
so.
Like I think it's like a different main line, I guess, because here's what I think, because they haven't fully told the full story of the Three Kingdoms in this style. I think at this point it's all but guaranteed that they're gonna make a follow up to maybe showcase the rest of the story because we're nowhere near Wuzhang Plains yet. We actually haven't got into like the main conflicts of the Three Kingdoms yet. This game story-wise, is a lot of setup of why the Three Kingdoms became divided. And as soon as that conflict starts, it ends. And to better showcase the rest of it, I think a sequel obviously has to be there. So I think I would consider this a new main line. I don't know how far they plan to go with it. I don't know if they're going to be like, hey, here's Origins 2, and we'll go to Wujiang Plains with this, and then in Origins 3, maybe we'll have them like start introducing the Jin Dynasty there, or maybe start doing that in Origins 2. I don't know exactly, but I think this could be like if anything, like maybe a miniature mainline series, because you can only take
Right.
this Origins concept so far. You can't redo this again. You can't retell the Three Kingdoms again under this framework. No one's gonna buy Origins 4 and be like, hey, we're gonna start again the beginning of the story. No one's gonna do that again. Because that's what they do in Dynasty Warriors games in mainline, where
It's
they
always the same
always
thing,
yeah,
right?
it's always the same starting point, you know? You can't really change up the main story of the Three Kingdoms. You can do like what if routes at that given variety. But
What
if you're
about
trying
that crazy one? The one where it's like
there's
was
like
it
a loot
Dynasty
wheel.
Warrior X Samurai Warriors? Do you
Oh, that's
remember
Warriors
that?
Orochi. Warriors Orochi. Yeah,
Yeah,
Chow's talking about because there's like like a sister series, Dynasty Samurai Warriors, which is basically Dynasty Warriors, but for feudal Japan with Nobunaga and that era. And they did there's another series called Warriors Orochi where they mash up Dynasty Warriors and Samurai Warriors together in the same game. So you have like a gigantic roster and like a crazy storyline. That's like not canon at all. It's just like a kind of big fan service storyline. A reason for those
look,
characters to
I'm
interact with
sure
one
they'll
another.
come up with some real ideas. I'm sure they even will do like I don't know, like a Samurai Warriors like origins if they
I
see.
wonder. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about that. I was like, because I don't think Samurai War, most recent Samurai Wars wasn't really that positively received because it was kind of like almost a soft reboot, where in the sense that like you had way less playable characters, you had a new art style that was cool, but in general, just like it felt like there were less features comparatively. And I really wonder because DW Origins is looking like it's already a big success, and I do wonder after they're kind of done with this Origins concept for Dynasty Warriors if they'll pivot to Samurai Warriors Origins. I would really like to see that. That is an interesting idea.
You know what I really want, Josh? I want a good video game based on the Han and Shu com- conflict.
Hmm,
They made
that's
one.
difficult. Yeah,
They made
yeah.
one for the Super Nintendo, but it's not a Muso game or whatever.
No.
It's like the romance of the Free Kingdom strategy games, right?
Uh-huh.
It's called Rise of the Phoenix. It's kind of terrible because how the game's organized, but I just wish they make something about that conflict. I love that conflict more than the Free Kingdoms, to be honest with you. Right?
Mm.
It's
Yeah, it's a difficult. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't know if they'd ever go there. Like, there's a lot of different things they could try out, but I think for now, I think they should think about what they're gonna do for Origins 2 and whether they want to keep on. Because I think they identified that like they made a choice. They know a lot of veterans don't like this uh sole playable character, and I wonder what they're gonna do for Origins 2. If they're gonna continue with that route or try to
I
get
feel
more of
it's
the
like
old
getting
cast.
the Resident Evil 4
Yeah,
treatment. It's like you
yeah,
got this new gameplay that got a huge, massive like fan base, but then you kind of alienate like that crowd that loved the Resident Evil for it being a horror series, right? So
yeah.
it's kind of going through maybe the same misconception, and then they just kind of keep making Origins games until one of them bombed, and then
Well,
they'll go back to formula, I guess.
I hope they don't run the Origins thing into the ground. I think they have a good thing going. I think they should try to mix it up. But Omega Force has done a lot of soul searching. Like I said, I'm sure they're not done with the third party licensed Gusto games. I'm sure they still have some under the hood that they want to do. Um, but I hope they don't run this concept to the ground. It is something that I want them to do like maybe once in a while, but don't. I want them to at least finish up the Three Kingdoms storyline with this, and then see what they do from here on. Samurai Warriors Origins is an interesting. Um, Other than that, the only other thing I want to mention for Dynasty Warriors Origins is that it does have a really cool way it does difficulty. Like, for example, your main three difficulties are like I think it's like easy or casual, then normal and hero. And there's like some a substantial like mechanics thing going on when you go from like normal to hero difficulty, where obviously there'll be a slight bump to health and damage for all your foes, but normally when you're blocking in normal and lower difficulty, you're free to block whatever and you're fine. But in hero mode and then the unlockable ultimate difficulty mode, whenever you block something, you're draining resources called bravery that you expend to use abilities. So you can't actually like block indefinitely. You have to think about parrying more, and the parry windows are cut down shorter in higher difficulty modes, and you have to perfect evade more because perfect evading um, builds up resources, builds up that bravery resource. So it is an interesting balance dynamic on those higher difficulties, and it even explicitly says that like enemy AI is more aggressive, and you feel that like the AI definitely are not shy about like getting their hits in whenever they can in those. So I do like difficulty modes that actually affect behavior of mechanics and AI systems rather than just like affect stats linearly. Um, so it's that's cool. I really like the way that post game is handled in this game, where after you're done with the campaign of a route, um, like I said, you can go back to the story, rewind down another route, but you unlock this thing called ultimate difficulty mode. And ultimate difficulty actually adds like mini objectives to each of like the like the main battle stages, the main story stages that give you different rewards if you meet that challenge objective. This objective to be like, hey, go beat down these enemy officers before they form a large enemy force, or go beat down this enemy officer because they know in that stage that enemy officer is like really hard to get to and or beat, or
Or you chase Lubu.
yeah, like one of them was like defeat Lu Bu in like one of the stages. The one that's fucked up is you know red hair Lu Bu's horse, always the one that people want because it's the fastest horse to get around. That you can only unlock it at ultimate difficulty. It's in the stage where you're 1v1 dueling Lu Bu, but the objective is you have to beat him without recovering health once. You cannot use a health recovery item, and you cannot use any like portable items that recover health. So you have to beat him 1-on-1, fair and square, without recovering health. And
Yeah,
that
that sounds.
on ultimate difficulty. And I was just like, I tried that the other day. I'm like, oh god, I'm fucking dying. Um, but it's a lot of fun. I really like that ultimate difficulty like gives you a reason to replay stages in a really interesting fashion and rewards you for it. Like there's like exclusive rewards, exclusive weapons that are like giga juiced in that as rewards in that difficulty. Um, it's really fun. That's really cool about how they do post game. I also want to mention, I know this is getting around. I also mentioned it when I kind of did like a mini impression thought on social media. But I think the thing that caught me off guard in this game, especially the one-on-one bond events, is that people really open up their hearts and are intimate with you. Whether it's a guy or a girl, it doesn't matter. They're just like Zilloan. Tonight I'm gonna etch the features of your face into my head or something. And this is like Guan Yu saying it, and you're like, all right, holy shit, cool. Like it's very intimate, bringing the real romance and romance of the Three Kingdoms and some of these bond. But you know, it's kind of like it's feeding into like that crowd, like you know, people. There's a lot of like very hot dudes and very hot girls, and Dynasty Warriors historically has always had like this big like female following, big female player crowd because there's a lot of like hot dudes naturally in the way that they designed that characters that era. So it's got not an organically like you know a huge female following historically, and it really caters to that crowd. I think you know all the fangirls will really get a big kick out of like these bond events in this game because they get really that the dialogue in this game is very kind of horny in some of those scenes. It was fun, you know. So it's great. And also just you know, I want to welcome James onto the podcast. He made it for the podcast.
Yeah,
How are you,
sorry for being
James?
a bit late. I
Yeah.
woke up and I had like some really bad indigestion. So I went
Mm,
back to sleep and I woke up and it's like, it's gone. Okay, thank God.
okay. That's good. That's good that you recovered. Yeah, it's that's
Must be
cool
so
that
out
you.
of context for James. He comes in
It,
this conversation and he hears
it,
dialogue
no,
is so horny.
I'm sure you
it's
see it on
actually
social
funny.
media.
Yeah, I mean the thing that Josh was referencing, the specific skeet that blew up on Blue Skies from a buddy of mine. Like they were playing through like the beginning of the game, and they got to that point, and it's like, yo,
Yeah, a lot of people. I don't know about the post that you're referring to, but definitely the Guan Yu scene is. I'm sure a lot of people have read it already, whether they encountered it or not, and that's just kind of like a recurring theme throughout. Like but it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a gal in this in this game. Everyone kind of becomes be flirtatious or a bit romantic with you, and it feeds into that fantasy. That's generally cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've got on quite a bit on Dynasty Warriors Origins. It's definitely worthy of that RPG moniker and falls under our scope. For people who are new to Romance of the Three Kingdoms and or Dynasty Warriors for the first time, definitely give this game a shot. Whether you're waiting for a discount, because I know it is pricey. It is a $70 game. Um, but I think if you generally feel like big battlefield scoped action RPGs, you will like this game a lot. It's a very fun moment to moment gameplay, a lot of characters to meet, and uh, a really cool story that like just kind of. There's a reason why the story of the Three Kingdoms continues to endure to this day. Is still mega popular, um, and still very beloved. It's such an interesting time period where a lot of different philosophies and ideologies is clashed in a very visceral way. So yeah,
And then
I
of
can't
course
can't
you'll
praise
be
it enough.
putting up you'll be putting up a review for it. But obviously, if
Yeah,
anyone who's listened to this podcast has already kind of heard your thoughts, but if you want to see in the
yeah.
written form, that review will be up, within the next week or so. I don't want
Yeah,
to like rush you,
momentarily.
but like, okay,
Yeah,
so
I'll probably have it to Adam today, and whenever he's done editing, it'll be up and over. So within the next few days, as of the show.
mhm.
So yeah, it's cool. I'm just it's so surreal to me that like there's a lot of love going around for Dynasty Warriors at the moment. It's like it's a series that I feel like it's always kind of been the underdog for understandably in some ways, and not so understandably in some others. But it's cool to see that at this very moment, people seem to be very much positively receiving this new entry, and I just can't believe that Omega Force pulled it off after Dynasty Warriors 9, because Dynasty Warriors 9 was very very flawed in many ways, and to see them have this big of a turnaround with Origins is it's kind of miraculous in some ways. It's really cool.
And then speaking of reviews on the site, the other game we kind of teed up a little bit, we do have a written review from Paul up on the site for Tales of Graces F Remastered. Paul is a longtime Tales fan, just like Scott and just like Adam and a lot of us, and he thought very highly of Tales of Graces F Remastered. So he has a 9 out of 10 review up on the site. I think it's been interesting for Tales of Graces F Remastered, and I'm not the first person to point this out, but the remastered version of that game is scoring on average like 5 to 7 points higher than the original. And I have a few like opinions or hypotheses for why that
Okay.
is.
Uh-huh.
It's I think it's because it's kind of a known quantity, and
Mhm.
again, this is not a universal opinion, and it's not a new opinion. But Tales of Graces F, and we might have stated it on this podcast way back when, maybe I don't know, but it's the sort of game that its gameplay is usually very well regarded, in spite of its story. I think
Mhm.
Adam has used the phrase like treat it like a comedy and you'll enjoy it a lot more. So I almost wonder if people going in, either they're revisiting the game or they're playing the game for the first time with that word of mouth in mind, that it's not a surprise to have the story be what it is. And I have not played it or watched it be played since the original, so I don't like have it in my long-term memory really about the specifics of the story, other than
Good.
I thought the characters were very one note and kind of not intricate, kind of basic, but potentially in an endearing way if you're in the right mindset. But maybe we'll kind of table any further. You can read Paul's review once Adam's back on the podcast. Maybe since he'll have the freshest eyes, we can talk about his experience revisiting the game. But I think like we mentioned in passing, or maybe we didn't mention in passing, but obviously the remaster, it's released on all platforms, including another PC release. Runs at 120 FPS in battle, at least on PC. Apparently, it doesn't run as well on Switch.
Okay. So first, you don't remember
Right?
the friendship tree in the story? Everyone loves the friendship tree. But second, so uh, before we go to your the things about the PC port specifically, like I think it's not unreasonable to say that a good chunk of like the Tales community. I think the last time that Tales that had a very resonant battle system with people was, with Grace's F. Because
Hmm.
you had, ever since Grace's F, you had Zisteria, and Zisteria is Zisteria.
Hmm.
Berseria had like, did a 180 in some ways, but it's very uneven, right? Where, Berseria had like I forgot the main character's name, but you had to expend health to do her skills, which some people didn't like, and it was very designed unevenly because Rokuro had like a really cool mechanics, but he did like no damage because you had to really work for it. So it's a pretty uneven like battle system where like some of the resources, especially the inventory bloat, became very not great in that game. Uh, and then you had Arise, and Arise is very well documented. Of like, hey, it has a cool battle system, but the boss design kind of sucks.
The
In it.
bosses have 3 times as much HP as they should.
Yeah. So for a lot of people, like Grace's F might just be the last Tales game overall that like, hey, they like the battle system from beginning to end because it's very flexible. Uh, in that regard, a lot for a lot of customizable player expression and the way that like, characters were able to combo into their
Oh,
skills.
and they played the Destiny remake. They don't know what the hell they're missing.
Um, so it could be like kind of like hindsight is 2020, where like, man, it maybe we haven't had a good like universal Tales battle system since Grace's F, and maybe
Yeah.
that could lead to like um higher scores in average
I
because
think I think it's a medley of a few things. Like I think like both of those can be true, but also I think if you look at a more broad view of how RPGs, specifically like Japanese RPGs, have been reviewing for the last couple of years, uh, there's just way more like knowledge of those games outside of like obviously we have always known about them, but in the broader sense there's been less acceptance of them, I'd say, in some like of the more major outlets, if that makes sense.
yeah, that's true. That'd be true as well too, because it's definitely there's definitely a period in Western coverage that kind of did not look upon JRPG
Mhm.
for sure. As for its perform, I don't know how it's performing on Switch. I don't know if that had issues or not on Switch as well. Um, but like there are some things with the frame rate issue. Like there are minor ones where the voice sync in skits can get can desync in higher frame rates with 120 FPS. I know that's been documented by people witnessing that. There's also just some weird gameplay related things, like some status effects like poison is tied to frame rates. So poison does more damage on higher frame rates because it's ticking faster. Um, Paralysis also, my friend noticed, it procs a lot, well, more often than usual that he remembers in the original on 120 FPS. But yeah, but it's like a double fold where like it procs more, but it also lasts shorter because it's treating the frame rate as speed. So that's like he only has to hold back for a few seconds for the paralysis to fall off because it doesn't last as long at higher frame
Mhm.
rate despite proccing. So there are still issues here and there like that. There are some reports of stuttering from people on the Steam forums because it's a Unity game and the frame rate cap function on Unity games isn't the best
Oh
as
no,
regards.
does it have the like weird issue where like the internal like tick rate or whatever is like 50 hertz, but then
I think yeah, they've documented those on the Steam forums, so it's probably akin to that.
Well, Sega went back and fixed the newest Super Monkey Ball that had that issue, so maybe Bandai Namco can.
Hopefully, I mean, but people are already dealing with using Special K to fix it as well. So it's
Was the Symphonia port ever like fully fixed?
I don't think
okay.
so.
Define fixed because they're never gonna make it run at 60 FPS. If
No,
that's
no,
what
no.
they
But just like not buggy, I guess.
I think they got it sorted out. I don't know if that's with I don't know if that's I don't know if that's internally or you have to use external tools for that. I don't know if
Like
they have.
obviously they're never gonna use 60 FPS because it's spaghetti code, and they decided to port it from the PS2 version when they like added more content when that game was 30 FPS. So it's just like bad choices all around, in my opinion.
So yeah, so just be aware that there are still some lingering issues at higher frame rates, specifically on the PC port of Remastered. Hopefully they get around to patching that. I would hope so, but you never know sometimes. Another fun thing that there's not a negative. Is at the very beginning of this remaster, unlike the original, the grade shop is available at the beginning when you start, and you get a fuckload of grade um, when you start the game. So you like if you just want a generally like more fun experience from the get go, you might do things like plus CC or double SP to just like start making like the battle system more fun instead of unlocking that naturally. So I mean that's just ways of like for people who already played the game originally, it's like hey, you can just get access to this immediately.
So if for people that doesn't understand what grade
Yeah.
is, if they never played a Tales game before, it's like it's your performance in battle. You get some grade points and use it to unlock like bonus features. It's very
Yeah,
simple, right?
yeah. So it's kind of that's cool. I mean, and then for people who really remembered Grace's F and really want to get to the good stuff, they're like, oh, I'm gonna pay grade to skip the childhood arc.
No, not the childhood arc. We cannot see asshole Asbel.
uh, but I mean, in general, I hope this remastered does well. I mean, it is for one of the more solid entries in the Tales series, especially on the gameplay front. And as previously reported, Bandai Namco is planning to release more remasters in the Tales series. We don't know what their schedule is. Obviously, they're not adhering to like release date or release like how they were chronologically released. Um, I don't know. I like who can say what else is what's next.
I'm
Give
just
me a
glad
Tales
Just
of
like the
that
Re-
sky's the limit.
I'm just glad that besides some minor issues with the frame rate, which let's be honest here, that is a very common issue. That isn't something that is really unexpected. Like I remember last year when I did that PC article on Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, and I was like, this is really weird how the like hair and cloth physics just do not work above 30 FPS.
Yeah. So yeah. We'll see, and then when we get Adam back, he can talk more about his experience with the rematch.
Mhm. Yeah, I think he's already gotten every achievement, including all like the crappy, super long, shitty, grindy runs. So he's done
Do you have
everything
to collect all the
as he wanted.
titles in this to get all the achievement? Because usually I think in a Tales game, I think collecting all the titles is probably the hardest thing to do. Usually.
There was something related to cooking, like mastering every recipe or something like that, that took him like 6 hours just on that, just like pure unadulterated grind. And he's like, "I'm gonna do it."
Uh,
All right, whatever floats your boat, dude. Yeah, but we'll touch in with him hopefully next week. And then the last game we have earmarked to talk about here is a major update to Honkai Star Rail. So obviously we kind of touch on these version updates as they come out, like at their 6-week cadence. But this one is a 3.0 for Honkai Star Rail, and who better to tell us exactly what that all entails other than Chow? So
Oh
Chow,
no!
yeah, can you? You
okay,
play
yeah,
this is one you actually play, right? I just
Yeah, I
I
did
loop them
play.
all together.
I did play. I keep on Honkai, but I put
Uh,
free games on the list there, and you chose Honkai, so we go with
Yeah,
Honkai, right?
yeah, I thought you chose it before we started. This is
No, no,
proper
no,
update
you
for a
picked it.
popular game, so let's do it. But tee us up because not all of us are up to date. I know that 2.0 like introduced like the space casino. I don't know if that's the right word. Space hotel.
No, it's more like it's more like a prison that became a dreamland. So they sent like prisoners there,
Oh, I'm sorry,
and
I got
then
it
it
wrong.
became
It's
and it's like and it became a dream. Then they took over this this dreamland and became a paradise for people, right? And that's kind
Okay.
of like what it is, right?
So tell us about like the major updates, like the key, like what are the sales pitch for 3.0 as a ostensibly major update to
As
Honkai
a
Star Rail?
non-honker.
Yes, as a non.
So in 3.0, we go to a new planet. So like in every major patches, they go to like a new planet, right? So it as soon as the story starts, you get one of the antagonists joining you from Penacony, which is the 2.0 planet. And as soon as you join, you go to this new planet. You basically get shot down from the sky, and you basically crash land in this planet, right? And everyone's hostile towards you. They basically told you that you had to fight these titans, in order to gain back their freedom. And so this planet is very Greek inspired, right? So people are not really keen to liking this new planet so far because they just see Greek and like, oh, it just looks like Genshin in a different skin, right? That's why they don't really seem to like this planet as much. So I guess I could see that. It's like I think the story is a lot easier to follow, maybe because it's not as text heavy as
I
the.
feel like it's like always a roller coaster. I feel like every time Honkai story is mentioned, it's more negative than positive from what people um the whenever I see people commenting on Honkai storyline, the storyline sucks. It feels like.
Yeah, they don't seem to like the story too much because I feel like it's just kind of building it up, but it's not really hard to follow. I think I'm more confused about the Space Dreamland planet because there was just so much wording for like just like a very simple yes or no, right? Like there's just
Right.
like one scene in 2.0 where this character meets up with this other character and he basically wants to know if she's an enemy or not. But they spent like 3 paragraphs talking about, oh, I was at this place and I have this alibi, blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, so you're not an enemy then. Okay, let's join forces. And you're like, what? That could have been summed up in a sentence, right? It's just like, but they just like to have all this word slop. So it makes the story very hard to follow for some people if you just don't have like a large attention span of reading things.
But it's also
So,
just like, you're balancing like your time, energy, and like headspace of like I don't want to read like a 1,500 word essay for a simple like something that could have been summed up like in 3 sentences. Like
anyways, it kind of
yeah.
starts out like very action packed, right? For this like expansion, right? I mean, you get shot from the sky, and then this guy basically destroyed your weapons because they told you that all these enemies here are hostile towards anyone that uses a weapon against them. But it's like as soon as you get to their base, you kind of introduce like all like the new mechanics of this land, right? So there is like a time rewind mechanic, so it kind of looks like Life is Strange, where Max is kind of like slowly rewinding time to like fix objects to like get through like the places in this new planet. So I guess.
I guess
You know what?
I didn't realize you had played Life is Strange. I've never played it. Like
Oh,
out
does
of
no
all
one
the
play that
games,
game?
Yeah,
no,
I
no, it's
played
just
it.
I just wasn't for whatever reason. I just wasn't expecting to hear that comparison. Like, oh, Chow's played Life is Strange. I don't know. Like, anyways, continue.
You know what other game had time rewinding object zones, Chow?
What?
Wuthering Waves.
Oh God. Look, I heard that the new expansion is so good that my Genshin friend is like, man, I had to divide my Genshin spending on this too. I think this
Uh,
patch is better than the
Nah,
Genshin patch.
nah, I'm done. I'm done with gacha game. I'm done.
But yeah, uh,
So is this time around mechanic specific to the location, like specific to this new planet?
yeah. Because I think that that's how it's designed in particular. Because all the objects here, how do I go say it? The main character basically has the ability to rewind the time based on the using the how you know how to describe it. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's stuck to this planet. One of the things that I do want to say is I play in Japanese voices, so I do not know how any of these names are being pronounced. So if I mispronounce them, it's like, oh, that's too bad, right?
Mhm.
Um, the major problem in this patch is that there's still that SAG strike going on. So if you play in English dub, it's like some of the main characters are undubbed, and some of them are dubbed. It's just like it's a very jarring experience, and I think the strike is going to be ongoing for a very long time. So if you play any like games that have English voiceovers, uh, that are ongoing, you might see like some of your favorite characters are going to be end up
Yeah,
unvoiced every day.
The most recent Guild Wars 2 patch is affected by that because some I don't know all the details, but some of the voice actors are union and some aren't. So some are voiced and some aren't. You know, some are affected by the strike and some aren't. So and unfortunately, unlike the last strike, like this strike seems like it's specific to the voice actors segment or oh no committee, and they're not getting as much traction compared to when it was the whole like guild strike. I don't know the details. This is just kind of like don't take me as an authority on that, but it's just unfortunate that it just seems like it's going to be a little bit more drawn out than previous strikes for a numerous reasons. Unfortunately,
But yeah, that's one of the things about this patch. So, but anyways, once you get to this planet, they basically tell you that they need to kill these free titans, right? And the major goal is that they kind of give you this story. It's a very weird story because they basically have these like fairies that kind of explain you the lore of this planet, and then it's like, do you find that we've been talking too long? And then they have another main character to kind of introduce you like a better explanation with like cutscenes and stuff instead of like reading it all in text, right?
Yeah.
So it's like basically there's like these free titans that created the planet, and then later on they said that there's also titans that cause chaos and deception to this planet, so they need to get rid of them, right?
Is that
And
like an additional 3 Titans? So it's like 6 now, or what?
no. Like as the way that the story described it, it's those original free titans became corrupted. That's why they need to
Okay.
get rid of them, right?
Okay.
And
Right.
then, and one of the major things that they did in the story is that they didn't have March 7th coming with you to this planet. She got really sick on the on the station, so she's like, I can't come with you. So this is the first expansion that like she's not like a major character in this story. So if you hate March, you'll love this patch, I guess, right? So she's like one of the main characters for anybody that doesn't keep up in the game. She's even the poster icon character in when you download the game, right? Oh,
well, I think
uh,
games with a larger cast like that over like a long like continue like a service game, like I think it's good in general just to kind of rotate out like who's has a priority in each patch. Sorry, I kind of stammered that out. Like I kind of like having like variety like that in like longer term games where
but
instead
she
of having
does,
just the same person always be like your
yeah,
voice, your
following
Navi or
with you.
whatever. Yeah, just having it rotate out and just change from update to update.
But she does become a major plot device in the storyline because she gives you her camera and said, "Make sure you take a lot of photos for me, right?" And one of the beginning of the story, when you meet one of the major characters of this story patch is Agalea, right? And she basically have a task for you. It's that she basically tell you their goals is to defeat the Titans, right? But at the same time, it's like you never reveal your secret of where you belong, which is that are from the space, right? You cannot let the people know that, right? And there is this one scene where you basically try to take camera like photos of the landscape, and this guy is like, "Hey, it's like you want to take pictures here? Fine." It's like I could take it for you. It's like okay, and you basically lend him March's camera, right? And he basically shuffles through the camera and saw all these pictures of you or something like that you're in space or blah blah. And he's trying to like reveal like everybody's like, hey, this guy is from space, or I could prove that like there's somebody out there, or aliens are out there, or something like that, right? And so you basically broke Agalea's promise to you, to her, right?
Nice.
And then she basically tries to kill you afterwards, saying that because you broke this taboo. Obviously, she didn't. She's not really trying to kill you. She's just trying to test you.
You are
I think this
courting death.
But I think this part soured a lot of people about her character because she tried to like kill you on this thing. But it's like she revealed that she wasn't purposely trying to do this, right? She's just trying to test your resolve, right?
It's also
Right.
just a dumb framing to like if I guess if your main character was smarter, they would have let the camera in the first.
Yeah. It's just like stuff like that happens, right? So, and I think from there it's like that's when the story picks up, right? Then you basically tells you that it's like either we work together or we don't. It's like and they basically said that it's like if they just ran out from there, it's like I don't think they were like good candidates to help us to fight these titans, right? And the story just kind of builds up from them going into this big giant dungeons to fight these titans or going towards there, and that's basically this patch for now, right? It's still a major update. I mean, it takes like 10 hours to get through this story alone, and then you probably have to wait or like 2 months for the next patch to see where it's headed to. But it's like, you know,
All I know is that they used to have Herta, and now they have the Herta.
yes, I did get her. She's basically this scientist that's a complete narcissist about herself. She loves about everything about herself, so she makes a bunch of dolls that looks just like her. And
But she's
now
the
you get to play
original, the Herta.
yeah, you get the original now, right? She looks like a mage of some sort, right?
She has a
But
big hat.
yes. She kind of became a meme in the Japanese version because every time she used like her special attack, she would say "Kuru Kuru." Now you get the best Kuru Kuru, right?
Okay, all right.
I think if you don't know Japanese, Kuru Kuru is like kind of like spinning. It's like a noise
Mhm.
that makes when people spinning around. So
If you play
Yeah,
a
now I know.
Tony in Japanese,
I
they
did
give you
not know
that.
what that meant, but I didn't want to ask and seem ignorant.
No.
but
I'm
yeah,
glad you
she kind
explained.
of became a meme in the Honkai Star Rail scene when this character first released because she kept saying "Kuru Kuru," you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now you get the bigger Kuru Kuru.
Bigger Kuru.
But yeah, it's like I was looking forward to this patch. I think it's a lot easier to follow than the Pinaconi patch because Pinaconi's story was just like a word slop, and it was very hard to focus without like your full divided attention reading this text. And I actually think like some of the side quests in Pinaconi is better than the main story. Like there's this one storyline like when you do a side quest in Pinaconi is where you basically this guy created this nuclear weapon of some sort and destroyed planets with it, and then it's this government agency basically force him to like press the button to blow up this other planet, right? And he just trying to wipe this memory away from him so he can't give this research to like these people like to create these weapons again, right? So it's just like there's like way more interesting quests than I say from the main story in my opinion, than some.
Is that true for 3.0 as well?
3.0 is like I don't think there's a lot of quests yet, or at least I haven't like opened all the quests yet.
So looking
Um,
back at the second chapter, 2 point whatever, like you're looking at it now that it's all wrapped up and saying it's
yeah,
had some really strong,
I'm just like kind of like doing like all the Pinnacle quests like as like a wrap up, just to like get some gems for rolls. I know it sounds kind of screwed that I'm just doing the quests for the rolls, but some of the quests are very interesting. Like there's also like this one of them is like, this girl. She basically acts like all nice to people and saying that she's like an emperor, right? And later on, there's like these two assassins that want to kill her, and they're like, why do we want to kill this person? She's so nice. And basically, in Pinaconi, they could like wipe out their memories and live like clean. And when you like clear up her memories, she was this tyrant. She was like this princess that someone tried to assassinate, and then she got so paranoid and she started genociding her own people. And then they're like saying, if you live as a nice person after all your memories are gone, are you still? It's like, do you still carry the crimes that you did in your past? It's like, no. It's like, or yes, depending on how you do it. So you could send her to get executed at the end by exposing her, or you say that she's a nice person now. She should be free of her crimes because she has no memory of her past.
I
So,
don't remember the exact statement, but there's something in Skyrim when you're talking to I'm gonna butcher his name, Parthenorax, where it's like, is it better to just have been and always be a good person, or have been a bad person and become good? And the way you're kind of describing that is kind of reminded me of that kind of just that concept,
so
of which
yeah,
there
like
is no correct answer.
I admire the people that have the mental fortitude to like play like stuff like Honkai Star Rail and like Arknights like simultaneously, keep it in their rotation, and they meticulously read the stories of both, like no skipping the text at all.
it's like yeah, it's getting a little too wordy. Like I just wish there's a skip button. I'm sorry, guys.
Skippa.
But like in general, like I forget what it was, but I saw something on someone had retweeted a report about like only 6% of game time in 2024 2023 was spent on new games and everything, and most people are playing this was more like Apex Legends and Valorant and things like
Fortnite.
that, but I don't know, like, Genshin, and back in 2026 2027 2028, like people are going to be playing their Wuwas and their Genshins and their Honkai Star Rails, and you can only have like one or two kind of running at a time for an individual person in terms of playtime. So yeah, I have the one MMO that kind of sucks some of my time, But yeah, people who play, do you keep up on Genshin and Honkai, Chow, or just Honkai at this point?
I just log into Genshin to roll. I haven't keep up with the new patch. I heard the new patch depends on who I ask. Some people say the new story is great. Some people I heard it's a disappointment with not much of a good pacing. I don't know like who to trust because I didn't really play through the new Genshin patch. I wasn't
Hmm.
really like interested in it, right? I just like look at Wuwa. It's like Wuwa does like everything better now and just provides everything. But I already spent all this money on Genshin and I just wish I could just transfer it over to Wuwa.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
That's a crazy thing to say.
It's like Wuwa has fucking flight. They have this awesome character named Carlotta that just came out with guns and like what is it like when
Yeah, kind of joint
yeah
voicing her. Yeah.
voicing her is like oh my god I want this character. I don't want to like
Go fucking through Google or Apple or whatever. Hey, can I get a refund on all my Genshin shit? And then they're gonna ask you for the reason. It's like I really, really want to give it to this other game instead. I really want to get Kano Ada. That's my
well
reason.
Kirito start a new game and he had all his equipment from his past file from using his same name. Okay.
Okay, okay, Kiri. I'm gonna start calling you Kirito then. Fuck. Oh yeah. That's you're a treasure now.
Well, with that, we'll go into the news section. We've already talked about our shout outs for reviews on the website. We have Trails of Graces F, and then within imminently we'll have the Dynasty Warriors Origins review from Josh. As for headlines, there's not a lot, but we have one that we put up front here that there's not a lot to talk about, but it's something that we kind of have to mention is that Nintendo has finally officially stated yes, then the Switch 2 is our next console.
No
Yes,
way.
the
That's
yeah,
crazy.
yes, the leaks if you've been following, which I don't seek them out, but so many people are so like paranoid about them that it's hard to avoid them. But yes, the Switch leaks were all pretty much correct as far as I can tell. So basically what this actually is like a 2-minute kind of I don't want to say sizzle reel. It's like a 2-minute teaser for the
It's a
mostly
first look
about
trailer.
mostly about the hardware. It's basically someone uh it's artistic way to present like what the device looks like in terms of size. I think someone estimated that has like a 7.9-inch screen, but they haven't actually given us specifications. It's just based on how the old Switch morphs into the new Switch. I know there's been leaks or rumors about mouse cons, about Joy Cons that can act like a computer mouse, and there's a part of the trailer that seems to like suggest that might be true. Again, there's no actual confirmation of what if that's actually a feature or not. And then there's no like accompanying hardware or basically this is saying come back on April 2nd
Yeah. For the
to
mouse
actually
thing,
get real details. Go ahead.
for the mouse thing, there's like two separate things in the trailer that suggests that one, the actions of them themselves like sliding, but also like during the kind of like morphing sequence thing, you can see a part of the Joy-Con on like the rail itself that seems to be like an optical sensor, which would very much suggest that the mouse thing is actually part of it. So
The Joy Cons are magnetic instead of like slotted.
yeah, it's not a real
Mhm.
system anymore. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's gonna be weird to get used to.
the sound is a
It's
clack instead of a click now.
You know what? God bless Nintendo. They still showed that this will have a fucking 3.5 millimeter headphone jack.
Oh
That's
yeah.
one of the things I was like, oh, this still has a headphone jack. Thank fucking God.
Mhm.
Oh my, because everything else is like, oh, we got rid of the headphone jack. I'm like, bro.
Like I thought you used this USB-C or you all use Bluetooth now, right?
The funny
It-
thing is about that is that this is like the one device where I wouldn't have even been that mad if it got rid of the aux port, considering it has two USB-C ports, so you could still listen to your fucking headphones and charge at the same time.
I know, but I like my aux port.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. It's just funny that
Yeah.
it's like they did it right
Yeah.
both ways.
Yeah, they did it. Yeah, but it's this was a very expected but smart way to do it because the last time they tried to do this with a follow up to a very highly successful console is Wii U, and when they showed that off, people could tell if that was like a new console or just a new controller for the Wii. Even the way that like I was watching it live and they revealed, I'm like, Is this just like a new controller for the Wii? I can't fucking tell. And I'm like into video games, and I can't tell.
I knew multiple people that legitimately, like even like several years after the Wii U came out, thought it was just a controller for the
Yeah,
Wii.
yeah, it was
People
it's
that I
not a good
thought would
reveal.
have known, and it's like the fact that they were confused. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so them very, very explicitly showing the transformation that like, hey, no, there's a Switch, but it's called Switch 2, so it's not the same as a Switch. We put it the logo with the 2, showing that there's a big ass 2 on the logo, and we're showing off in the trailer that this is definitely not a Switch. It's a bigger Switch, but it's a definitely evolution of the Switch because you see everything else is new about like it has the same layout, but it's a new console. And they showed off a new Mario Kart in it as well, which is the it's kind of interesting that like probably the biggest fucking seller on this thing, the most high the game that will sell the highest amount of copies on this thing lifetime is the first game they showed for it, which is funny. Um,
I think it's a missed opportunity. They should just call it the Super Switch.
that will confuse people. So if
Yeah,
they
they
call
learned from
it,
the Wii U. I mean, it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
if they call it anything else but the Switch 2, you will confuse people. So it was the right move for them. And then they announced, hey, obviously uh, this is not gonna come out, before April. They're gonna have a direct for this thing on April 2nd, and for throughout April and May, they're gonna have like hands-on experiences around the world. They already had like a ticketing thing or whatever, for people to sign up for on that. So we know at like
It's-
we know at latest probably the release of this is beyond May, so somewhere summer or fall.
I think I think it might actually be late May to June, considering like if you look at how the Switch like lead up was handled, the January event was what this direct is being positioned as, and the Switch itself was out like very early
Yeah,
March.
yeah. I think like mid to late June at earliest. Yeah, I can see the like because the latest date that they've shown on the hands-on experiences is like the 1st of June in Seoul.
I th- I could see it being a situation kind of like with the Wii U where they got the Wii U out and then like very shortly after they had another big like slate of announcements. Like remember when there
Yeah,
was that like November, December like direct in 2012 for like a bunch of Wii U games, or was it January? What
it
I'm
is
saying is
January.
that
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if it did come out like before SGFs, just so they could also have a second wave of like, hey, this is out now. Here's these games, and also here's a bunch of stuff that's coming in the next like year and a half. I don't know.
we'll see.
We
That's all yet to
basically all I'm
TBH.
saying is that we
Yeah,
don't know yet, and
yeah.
considering the past, there is a chance it could be out as early as late May. We just don't know.
hmm Yeah, we'll find out in April. And people had to clarify. Yes, it is April. It is not February. It is April. American
Yeah,
people.
yeah, because originally, like, I think the UK version originally, what people saw first, and it said, 2/4, but that was day month, not month day. So yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I don't
uh,
know if I almost don't know if I even want to broach this, but like, it feels like every outlet under the sun has had to give like a temperature check about whether this reveal was bland or boring or not. And maybe I'm just older, or maybe I'm just myself boring. Let me know in the comments. But like, I actually kind of prefer this. Like, yep, it's real. Here's a date when you're gonna learn more about it. Like, I don't need it to be like glitzy, glamorous. Like, this is, to me, this is perfectly fine. Like, if I wasn't like influenced by outside forces, I wouldn't have even really considered it bland. Like, oh yeah, okay, they've revealed that it's real. They've gotten ahead of the leaks, and now they've outlined a day to talk about it. But some people are saying like, wow, that was boring. Is Nintendo boring now? And I'm like, to me, I'm just like, that just seems like such an extreme extrapolation from a little
It
2-minute teaser. But
yeah,
maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
it feels funny for you to say they got ahead of the leaks when considering every single thing here was stuff that we knew.
I guess maybe not get ahead of, but just like,
we
Catch
never
up
have
to.
we never have to hear about the Switch 2s being leaked ever again. Or like here's definitely this time Nintendo's revealing it. Definitely
I,
this time Nintendo's
I don't
revealing.
know. We have 2.5 months of people possibly continuing to do that.
Uh, I mean, they gave a date for the direct. Come on now.
Yeah. And it's
The one
also
thing
not the first time they've taken like, and other people have said this too. I'm not saying that we are the only enlightened people on the internet, but
Yeah.
like it's not fundamentally different from the Super Nintendo, the Game Boy Advance, the GameCube. Like, and some of those were very successful, and some of those weren't, like the
I mean,
GameCube.
some of those are definitely big advances, but that was because when video game hardware and getting better graphics was a big advance. Like Nintendo to Super Nintendo was very, very, very big spec wise. Like Mode 7 was like a big
Mm.
innovation at that time. You know, like it's like hindsight's 2020 when you think about graphical advances. But for at the time, that was a very, very big, especially the controllers having two extra buttons. You know, on the from Nintendo Super Nintendo, and then that it's one of those things that like at the time, it felt like there's gonna be a lot of big innovations, especially even from the way you play games because they have extra inputs now. So I don't
Yeah.
really I don't want to downplay that like the Super Nintendo wasn't as big as people are saying. It's like no, it was a very very big momentous step
Mm.
forward, especially during the you know. But when you think about like gameplay innovations like GameCube they did the mini disc, they tried to do the GPA connectivity with that. They had attachments to that, but it wasn't as big of an upgrade as like innovation wise as when you think about it in retrospect. Now, like when you're thinking about now, 3DS is something like I think is more in line. There's like DS to Nintendo 3DS in terms of like legacy and like the way you interface with its gimmick. Like the 3D part of the 3DS was practically forgotten within 2 months.
Right.
But
Yeah.
people treat it as like, hey, it has a better specs than the DS, so you get like more higher fidelity handheld experiences because the 3DS had a spec bump. It has a new system. But in terms of its gimmick was forgotten in 2 months, but no one really cared because who fucking cared about the 3D without glasses, you know?
Yeah.
But in terms of like but the Switch's gimmick, it continued. It's still being used to its day. That handheld to the portable to the TV output input. Millions of people still use the Switch as that. Its gimmick never got old ever since day when it was on shelves. For millions of people, they still use the Switch as that. Hey, I'm gonna play it handheld and I'm gonna dock it to my TV. And that to me, that's like one of the most interesting things that like it's good to capitalize on that because it's a universally helpful function, and most importantly, in Nintendo's backend, it unified those ecosystems of not having a console or handheld ecosystem. The Switch unified that. You don't
You know
have
what
to
this
worry
kind
about
of jokingly reminds me of?
what.
Do any of you guys follow Dropout? It's like a service that came out of College Humor.
Vaguely remember that name. I think I remember like the logo. It had like a yellow logo or something like that.
Like one of their actors, contributors, writers is named Brennan Lee Mulligan, and he
Mhm.
did this like whole bit about like Oreo, you've perfected the cookie. Stop stop messing with it. It's kind of like Nintendo, you've perfected your console. Don't mess with it. So I don't know. Maybe some listeners will get that, but it's the idea there where it's like, yeah, they don't have to come up with a new gimmick when the one they've got is so strong and cohesive and like core to their identity. And even then, we say that, but MouseCon, we'll have to see like what ends up
Yeah, we'll
folding
see
out
what
of
it
that.
is. Yeah, that is an interesting thing, but I don't know who knows how practical it is. But it is an interesting thing, and then people are still speculating about like that unmarked button on like the right Joy-Con, like it's called like the C button at the moment.
Mhm.
No one really knows like what that is. Yeah, we'll see. Also, I think the one thing I wish, and it's a very un Nintendo like move that I would want from them, but I wish since they showed off what the console looks like, I kind of wish we just kind of had numbers and a spec sheet with it to at least chew on until the direct. But that'll all be forthcoming. And it'd
Mhm.
be very un-Nintendo like for them to reveal the console and then reveal the specs numbers wise.
Right.
uh, so, but I think that's the only one thing. It's like okay, the console exists, and we'll see more.
Yep. We'll follow up in April when we hear more.
I'll be playing. Until then, we'll all be playing Xenoblade X
Yep.
until the direct. That's right.
I mean, that's a pretty good way for a Switch to. I mean, I don't know. They've said. I guess one thing we didn't say is that they stated on the limited amount of information that was provided that it will play most Switch games, like physical cartridges as well. And it seems like all but confirmed that would be games like Ring Fit, where you have to fit a Joy-Con into a peripheral. If the Joy-Cons are different sizes, they might not be
Yeah.
compatible. Things like
Or
that.
stuff,
But
like
otherwise, like
Labo.
Labo stuff, Labo, whatever it was, and then like everything else, it will physically support your collection of cartridges, which is
Which is
good because that's not something Nintendo has ever done. I guess GBA to DS technically has rarely done or only occasionally done.
yeah, it's I mean, especially with like digital libraries getting bigger and bigger, I think it's like
Yeah,
a
that too.
expected, universally expected at this point. Like, it feels shitty now, as if you can't just do that because digital libraries just exist in perpetuity for people.
I guess I take it back. GameCube worked on Wii, Game Boy Advance worked on DS. They always had like this one gen crossover.
Yeah,
Wii
the
on Wii
funny
U.
thing is
Okay.
that the GameCube would have worked on the Wii U if they had like made sure that the disk drive could have properly read the discs, because like in Wii mode it just works, and you have the GameCube adapter obviously for controllers. So
Weird stuff. I remember like when the DS had like a GBA slot underneath it.
At the
Oh,
time, we didn't question it, but now it feels very strange. Like, here's the additional slot for the older media. Like, oh, that's different.
it's
Bygone era.
amazing. It's the best thing ever now.
Yeah. But yeah, that's our. Well, figured we'd at least touch on the Switch announcement. Of course, we could talk about the games where we had hoped to see on Switch. Maybe that'll be a fun list to call. I'm not sure on Switch too.
I think once you learn more about the thing on April, it's hard to really say. Like, the sky's the limit. It's like, here's what we want on the Switch. It's like, we want everything on the Switch too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so, but I'm very interested to see what they have to share on April 2nd, whether it's a hardware showcase and some of the software. Obviously, a lot of people are going to want to learn more about that new Mario Kart because it has like people like counted like, oh, it has 24-player races now. It's like, oh my god, that's a lot. That's a lot of racers.
I might be dumb for thinking this, but I want 3DS games on the Switch too. Basically, you had the screen for the top screen, and then you had like the handheld for the bottom screen or something like that.
Yeah, give the Etrian Odyssey people to really something to chew on. They're like, oh my god, we tried to make the two screens work with this remaster, and we're just disgusted. Nintendo, bring back the dual screens. We can't do it. It's too difficult.
did you guys see the patent that people found where, at least at one point, who knows if they went any further than this, they were considering a peripheral to like add a second screen through that top USB-C port?
Oh, I didn't know. That'd be that's a
I
funny cat.
I would, if they did that, and that was a way to like add in backwards compatibility for like DS or 3DS games. Please God,
That'd be
please
crazy.
fucking.
That'd be a really crazy thing if they did that. That'd be insane.
It would also be very funny if that happened, considering all the people that are like, "Oh, this is boring." It's like, first off, no. Second, here you go.
Damn, dude. Play Meteos on that. Hell yeah.
Going on to more RPG focused news, we have kind of two. I'm calling them announcements here. This first one isn't actually it is an announcement. Back in late October, we covered a new studio and a new studio publisher partnership, Rebel Wolves and Bandai Namco, and they announced that their debut project was going to be like a multi-entry RPG series called Dawnwalker. But at the time, all they had was like some very loose concepts and like one piece of concept art. So I actually specifically remember that saying like, this seems neat, but there's nothing here to really dig into because it just seemed like, okay, they're working on a new like Western fantasy RPG. And they've returned now to announce the first entry in that new IP. It is called The Blood of Dawnwalker. This is being done by Rebel Wolves, new studio. They're being helmed by a Witcher 3 director named Konrad Tomaskiewicz. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too much. And what this is a cinematic trailer, kind of like the Witcher 4 trailer, in that it's like a 3-minute kind of intro cutscene that takes place like 2 years before the main game, followed by kind of an in-engine gameplay teaser with a promise to show more in the coming months in terms of actual gameplay, which to me, I actually kind of think that's a good compromise. Just that you have your cinematic, we're introducing our new project to give you like the vibes and like the setting, the set dressing, and then including an in-engine teaser about what the game might actually look like. And I kind of enjoyed that. And again, this is an audio podcast, so discussing the trailer in a lot of depth is kind of a little counterintuitive. But I will say that when I went to click on this trailer as part of like, oh, I want to make sure I watch this and take some notes before this podcast, I wasn't that excited about it because it felt very like generic on the tin. But actually, after I watched it, I thought like actually it's a pretty interesting premise. It takes place in like a fantasy version of the 1300s, like late Middle Ages, like
It,
armor designs that wouldn't look out of place in a Witcher or a Kingdom Come Deliverance, of course, with fantasy elements. Um,
yeah,
I
they
don't know.
mentioned the press release. It's 14th century Europe during the plague, and you play as the Cohen dude who turned into a vampire called the Dawnwalker universe.
Mm,
So it's basically vampires during the plague in medieval Europe is the pitch here, which is interesting. I mean, that's an interesting premise. The thing I don't like is like at the end of that trailer when they show a little bit of the in-engine scenes, they're like gameplay reveal summer 2025. It's like, yes, sure.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
I
yeah,
wish it was earlier, but I mean, I'm glad that they have the small. And when I say small, it's like a 30-second in-engine thing, but it's clearly not like gameplay perspective. It's like souped up, so it's hard to
yeah.
actually like glean like, okay, it's not gameplay, it's in-engine render target
I'll
sort of
get
thing.
for me. I'll get more interested if they actually start, detailing and showing, what people do when they play the
Yep.
game. Yeah.
And
So
not
it's
yeah not a new opinion. And unfortunately, when I saw this, I was like, oh no, Souls like.
no, I don't think
But
it's that. At least, yeah.
no, it looks a little more like high speed. But again, we're
Yeah.
trying to extrapolate from a very small snippet of quote unquote footage. But I think the premise is kind of interesting. And yeah, basically this the cinematic is kind of like how you're the protagonist. I'm forgetting his name, Cohen. Uh,
Yeah.
got his vampire powers. He has his younger sister who's basically going to be murdered by the state, by the knights, the whoever's in charge, because they don't know how to stop the plague, and she is, you know, infected, and they need to kill her. And he's like, no, she's young, she's innocent. And then the vampires come in and basically heal her using like demon blood magic. So it's kind of like heals her, but at what cost, sort of thing. They kill all the knights, and then it infers that they give this character like some sort of leniency for some unknown reason to kind of fight on their behalf. And it's very much seems like an uneasy alliance sort of thing. Like I was just saved by vampires and now I'm working for them. Maybe I don't know, but it's an
It's
interesting concept and
well,
it's definitely kind of put it on my radar. Go ahead.
we got our second, I guess, big Western scope vampire RPG. So yeah, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodline
Mhm.
supposedly that thing still exists. Now this,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's this year though. I highly doubt it's this year for
I
this game.
doubt it. Yeah, but I don't know. It's cool to see a new IP.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's cool to actually get some actual details compared to what we got in October. But I think that was more of a business focused announcement, saying like, "Hey, we're partnering with Bandai Namco as our publisher here," which is kind of interesting to have a Western RPG in the style under their publishing label.
Yeah, Bandai Namco, because people usually turn to Bandai Namco for the anime games, or anime
Anime and
aesthetic
action, yeah.
games. Yeah.
Though I guess they do publish console versions of From Software some things. So that's it's not like it's brand new to them. Though I guess From Software is technically Japanese JRPG. It's one of those things where the genre definitions are fuzzy. And then the other kind of announcement here, this is really more of a teaser of announcement, is and we knew this was coming, but we're going to get more information of Fuga Melodies of Steel 3 on January 23rd. And so all we have right now is like the basic the teaser website for
Yeah,
saying that more news is coming on that date.
we have the teaser website and the extra movie. Like Fuga One had it, where it's like if you did all the like gear events to unlock these gears, you would get a teaser movie showing off the next game, and Fuga 2 had the same thing. So I'm really hoping that this one is fairly different from Fuga 2 because I liked Fuga 2 quite a bit, but my like one complaint, and I know that Adam had a similar issue with it, was that it was very much an iterative sequel rather than like there wasn't that many squarely new mechanics. And I feel like that's fine for like 1 to 2, but if they do that again, it's going to be too much or well not enough is what I mean. And based off the secret movie for like 3 at the end of 2, it does make me curious if they might radically change how the gameplay loop works. But who knows? Because the director that worked on the first 2 is no longer at.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I feel really bad for him because the developer he went to,
Why? What?
Platinum Games.
Oh, fuck. Oh, no.
Oh, rip.
Oh, shit.
Every time somebody finds out about it, it's always the same reaction. It's like, no, get out of
Oh,
there.
yeah. Dang, that's hopefully that dude's doing good.
Yeah,
Hopefully the dude's doing good.
We have a few other trailers for some upcoming games. Some of these are pretty imminent. Obviously, coming out in just a few days. Honestly, Ender Magnolia, Bloom in the Mist. It's got its final trailer ahead of its launch, and this trailer is basically kind of like an overview trailer of showing almost entirely gameplay with story snippets with a really like evocative like backing soundtrack. So, and I know a lot of people thought that Ender Lilies was like incredibly emotional and like poignant in several ways, and I know a lot of people have been really looking forward to the follow up in Ender Magnolia. So, and obviously we're gonna have this covered on the site as well. Likely one of the games will be kind of talking and headlining next week, but it got its final trailer ahead of the release date on January 22nd. We also got a trailer for a game that was announced, I believe, last March. This is like a kind of a Diablo-like isometric action RPG, Dragonkin: The Banished, and it's going into early access on March 6th. And ahead of that, they're basically it's like a gameplay tee up about what's available in early access, which primarily boils down to the 3 available characters slash classes that are going to be available. So they've announced the each of these characters has like a name and a history. So they actually are they're not just classes; they actually are like characters in the world. There's a barbarian, a knight, and an oracle. So they kind of showed little like I don't know like a cinematic action montage for each of these in this early access upcoming trailer. The game will have 4, but I guess only 3 are going to be available in March. So that'll be coming out in March. Uh, and then with these 3 characters playable, I don't know if they've stated how long they intend to be in early access prior to full launch. The only other thing they've said is that, of course, the early access is only on PC, though when it is available for launch, Dragon Kid and the Banished will also release on Xbox Series and PlayStation 5.
Dang, dude, there's some wild names for these heroes, like Lothair de Montdragon
Mm-hmm.
and Rurik Haraldson and Electrain.
Yeah, the Oracle is a superhero, so they only got a one word name.
Oh, okay, got it.
I don't know, I'm not sure. We also got kind of a big, only right off the heels of pushing the release date back to March. Kind of a big, I don't know how, like a big primer on Assassin's Creed Shadows, all about exploration and like world movement. This is kind of similar. If you remember Dragon Age: The Veilguard, when it was coming out, they would have like these newsletters interspersed with like 10 to 30-second video snippets, kind of almost more like a tutorial guide. And they've done this for Assassin's Creed Shadows as well. A bunch of little snippets about how the quest system works, how the exploration works. A lot of it, as someone who has not played Assassin's Creed since 2, and I don't really know, like, oh, that seems new, but I don't know if that's like Odyssey's Origins Valhalla like lineage or not, because obviously this is a title in that same vein, in like their more RPG slanted Assassin's Creed title. When I was looking through like their big, pretty long primer here, the one thing that I looked at and thought was kind of the most interesting to me was their like objective board. It's like a quest board, but like a character map as well. It looks vaguely like the one from like some of the Xenoblade games, kind of. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But of course, what they show is only a very small sliver to really show like how impactful it is. Um,
I feel like
so yeah,
I feel like
that was my one
they
takeaway.
had that. I feel like they had that in what was it? What's the most recent one? Mirage? I feel like that they had some sort of system like that. Mirage.
Yeah, and the
Um,
recent one I know is kind of like focused differently. So that's kind of the weird thing about Assassin's Creed. It's got these like remember how we had like Symphonia Team and Destiny Team for like Tales games or whatever it was, and there was like two different like lineages or pedigrees for games in the same series. That's kind of what Assassin's Creed feels like now. It's like, oh, this is Type A or Type B, where I guess Type A would be more like the original, few entries, and then Type B would be like the RPG opener ones. But even then, I haven't played enough of those to know how meaningful that distinction is, or if it's more of a marketing thing. But yeah, like I said, some of these might be carryovers from or modifications from more recent entries that I'm just not as familiar with.
Well, they really got to get people on board for Shadows, no
Yeah.
matter the
I,
cost.
Adam, when I was talking to him in a Discord chat yesterday, he covered Valhalla for us, which is the most recent Assassin's Creed game we've covered on the site. And he said like that was like 4 years ago, and I'm still burnt out.
Yeah.
He's still like I've had my fill of Assassin's Creed years later. He's like I think he's more interested in following Shadows in terms of reception, player base, things like that, rather than like actually
Yeah,
playing it himself.
I think I'm definitely on like depending on what's coming out around it. I'm maybe interested, but also like I also kind of want to hear the word on the street too.
Yeah, I
I'm
guess I'm more
very
curious than interested.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see.
But yeah, so lots of details from their most recent kind of blog post, with a ton of different video kind of snippets interspersed throughout. With this, we'll go into kind of the last section of our podcast, going through the upcoming release date, like our release date rundown. And a lot of these also did have accompanying trailers with them, so we'll kind of dive into those as well. The we I think I don't did we bring this up when we were talking about about Arknights Enfield? Is has an open beta now, or it launched yesterday at the time of recording. This is, or it's not open beta, I apologize, closed beta. You had to have signed up for it, and we have a link on our site that shows whether you've got access or not. And then alongside the launch of the beta test, they've released a new trailer that's basically like a story premise trailer about building a new society on this world. I don't know the Arknights canon about like how the exact framework of this is, but puts the player in the position of like administrator of a new colony on this world
You
that the
know what your
Daemons
player
probably going to
character
build.
is called in this?
What?
End administrator.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just use administrator because I'm not doing that. But yeah.
Oh, um,
Wow, we gotta ask Zach. He's our lore expert. He's the big Arknights guy.
yeah, I don't
Or-
know. There's a lot. There's a handful of Arknights people. Like they might be the strongest readers ever because every time I every time I talk to anyone about Arknights, it's like, yeah, I stay around for the gameplay, but I just skip all the story. Like, okay.
Yes. So if you signed up for this and you don't remember because it was a while back, I guess emails saying whether or not you were selected went out on the 9th of January. So
Yeah, there's a weird game. Like they recently kind of overhauled it since the last beta that they did. Like they kind of overhauled like the battle system from what the last look in on it to be, I guess, more active. I suppose the people didn't like. There was not really great feedback on the first beta's battle system, so they kind of made it more. Um, and I kind of I don't know. It seems like it's an interesting concept because they're trying to g- emulate a little bit of the Factorio in some parts of this. There's like a tower base building mechanic to it, and like actually have like a whole factory running to kind of manufacture your resources. So it's not going to appeal to everyone, but I sort of respect that they're trying to go for it. But
yeah, it seems like the
I
core gameplay. I've not played or seen like digested the previous like snippets, but it seems like it's a hybrid between like this base building and this combat focus. Like even the trailer doesn't show any combat gameplay, but it shows a lot of combat animation, similar to like what you'd see in a Genshin or a WoW. But I wonder like the balance between those two gameplay styles in this game, if it's going to
yeah,
stick or land. It just seems kind of well. I applaud them doing something that seems like it's on a different path. And Arknight's mobile game is kind of tower defensey, right? So it
yeah,
seems like
yeah,
it's in the
Star
same
Defense.
like lineage there. Also released yesterday at the time of recording on January 17th was a demo for the upcoming Phantom Brave and the Lost Hero, which is releasing at the end of the month on the 30th. Alongside the release of the demo, we got a new trailer. They call it the demo trailer, but what it is basically I didn't realize. I guess Phantom Brave, their what is it, the Bermuda Triangle, and then this one are like direct continuation. It's basically like the story so far sort of thing for Phantom Brave: The Lost Hero. Because I was like, wait a minute, why is it like showing some like this demo trailer? It's in 1080p, but it's showing like some really blurry, the pixel characters of the previous game. And I'm like, that seems strange. And then it goes like at the end of the trailer, it says, and now we find ourselves at the beginning of a new adventure or whatever. And it's the new kind of recent Disgaea 3D chibi like 3D model story rendering. Like, oh, that makes more sense. That's what we're looking at. But the trailer is very much a story thus far. If you've not played Phantom Brave, here's who the characters are and what they've been through at this point. So
So just
not
a little clarification, like the release for upcoming for it is for console only. The
yeah,
PC
good point.
release
Yep.
is later in spring.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, the demo is available now. Also, another demo available now that we don't have up on here is Kazan the First Berserker, Last Berserker, whichever one, whichever one it was. But yeah, that demo is available now and will also carry over to its launch in, I believe, March. Dokapon Sword of Fury will release on PC on January 21st. It is already available on Switch, I believe.
Might be for
Only in
Japan.
Japan. Only in Japan, yeah. Okay. But
But
the PC release will be global.
if you didn't ruin your friendship with the recent Dokapon release, you can go play an older Dokapon release to ruin to really make sure that you let go of those friends. Really ruin that friendship. Go for it.
Coming out on January 23rd, the isometric action RPG Achilles Legends Untold will be coming out on Switch. It released on basically all the other platforms back in late 2023. There's another trailer that basically just is celebrating the Switch announcement, or sorry, the release date for the Switch version of that game. Legend of Heroes Trails Through Daybreak 2, of course, is coming out in English officially on Valentine's Day, on February 14th. It is getting a story and gameplay demo for PlayStation consoles on January 24th. And the story aspect of that one will be the beginning of Chapter 1 and will carry over into the full game's release. Nothing about the PC or Switch version, any announcement of any demo for those consoles quite yet.
I'm really excited for my friend to play this because he's he's only played Daybreak 1. That's only Trails games he played and completed. He planned. I thought he was gonna stop at Daybreak 1, but he's actually gonna play Daybreak 2 and not play any of the other Trails games. Just
Oh
Daybreak 1 to
no,
Daybreak 2. It's gonna be awesome. I can't wait.
man!
No.
When he sees the final for real this time conclusion to a character arc that started in the second game in the series and went for like however many games, it's like, oh man.
Oh man, that's
He's
good.
gonna go
That's
back to Trails in the Sky, and he's gonna get to the end of the third, and that one scene that makes everyone cry.
he's definitely not doing that. He's only sticking with this.
Awesome,
Oh,
awesome.
that's actually the secret highlight of my February is hearing him go through this because he knows how me and my friend feel about this, so he knows our feedback, but he's still gonna do it, and we're like,
It sounds
that's
like
gonna be
he wouldn't
awesome.
have done it if not for the fact that he knows that it's going to be very, very funny to hear your guys' reactions.
Maybe I'm like, we don't know why you're doing this, but you know what? We're like, yep, like, okay. I'm excited.
To suffer.
As far as I
I'm
can
not the one
tell,
playing it.
As far as we can tell, we have no new dates landing in February, which is fine by me because it's already jam packed. Going into March, this is an indie game. Rhythm Adventure Everhood 2 will be releasing on March 4th. And the interesting thing here is that this was announced during like one of the IGN Summers of Gamings in 2023, and they said we plan to target release early 2025, and they've nailed it. Like it's rare to see that. Like it's say like
Holy crap.
we're gonna target this window in 2 years, and then 2 years later, like yep, we're ready.
Oh god.
Everhood 2. This seems like a very like quirky kind of psychedelic experience, but with the when I watch the trailer here, if you know nothing about it, the thing that I take away is that the battles are like Guitar Hero esque, where you see the enemy like at the end of your lanes, and they're attacking and you're like jumping lanes in like a rhythm, like Guitar Hero or like Audio Wave or some. There's a lot of similar like family of games, but that's like the battle system of this game is, and I think that's obviously kind of like their highlight. I guess the first one was pretty well received, so obviously I don't know much about Everhood 1, but fun little quirky game releasing on PC and Switch in early 2025. Going into April, I know this is one that Adam and others are very interested in. The recently announced Lunar Remastered collection will be launching on April 18th. This is for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC.
Yeah, this is really exciting. I'm very. There's just so many questions I have, and they haven't really shut. Like they're keeping enough under the hood, just enough that I'm like super curious. Like, what is the status on this thing?
I just want to
Yeah,
see
like-
what the translation is like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they
That's why I'm
didn't give
curious.
they didn't give any new footage or any trailer or anything like that. They just the date is April 18th is pretty much all we got. Oh, I guess I will say they did add a few other things. If you want a physical version for console, they're only available exclusively through Amazon for North America and Clear River Games for Europe. So if you want to get a physical edition, it's kind of a specific partnership with those vendors.
Yeah, I don't know if they announced the price at the reveal, but they announced the digital. Digitally, this will be a $50 USD in euro, and then for additional $5 euro extra.
It says
So
55 for physical in both places. So 55 US, 55 euro from either Amazon or Clear River. So yeah.
and they also had like new, like really cool key art for both games in the collection that they revealed too, along with this announcement. So yeah, but the
Yeah, and those will be reverse
just
cover. Those will be reverse cover arts too for physical.
all
editions.
right.
So
So that means for people who wanted to slay both, they have to get 2 copies.
Look, have you buy the original working design? Do you know how they like print variants of the same game? There'll be like 10 different variants of the same game, and there's some collectors out there trying to buy like every single variant of the game.
Right. Yeah. I can't do it. I tried to be a physical
That is
collector
a
once.
true collector
Yeah, I
mindset.
can't do it. I don't have the mental or financial fortitude to do that.
And then all the way out in May, this is our first, I think, real May date nailed down. Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma. This is the one that was originally, I believe, Project Dragon. Is launching on PC and Switch on May 30th. Though I guess technically May 31st on PC in Japan. But yeah, end of May for Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma. So this is the Rune Factory game that has 2 protagonists. I'm blanking on their names right now, but you pick one protagonist and the other one becomes like an NPC. Like the one you
Aiden
did.
and Sonja or Sonya, I don't know how you pronounce the J in that. The SONJA.
I'm not sure they're gonna do like what they did in Rune Factory Tide of Destiny, where these 2 protagonists where they merge into the same body, and then as the story progresses they separate, and once they separate they can marry each other.
Oh wait,
Well,
sorry. I was thinking of Tides of Destiny in the article. It's Subaru for the male and Kaguya for the female in Guardians of Azuma.
Yeah, so I was gonna say all I read here from Kite's write up is that it's whichever one you don't select will become romanceable. Like so you can have the 2 protagonists basically pair up if you want, one being your player character, one being an NPC, the one you don't choose. And of course there's a dozen other characters you can select. And I know when this game was first announced, clearly they were kind of going for more of like an action slant. But with this trailer announcing the release date, they open up showing kind of like I've not played Rune Factory, so I leverage on Chow and others' expertise here. They show basically the town building aspect, assigning NPCs to work different jobs. So I think it's kind of I don't know if telling is too strong a word, but that's what they open this trailer with is kind of those classic simmy aspects, and then they go more into like combat in the back part of this trailer here. So it does definitely still seem like it will focus on kind of again that hybrid approach with this title.
You remember Hina in Rune Factory 5, Chow?
Yes.
Yeah, she's in this game.
I believe she's just a
Yes.
kid in the Rune
Yeah,
Factory.
she's grown up in this one. She's like the pink haired girl.
They always do that in a lot of Rune Factory games. There would be like these was it? There's this one character in Rune Factory 1, I forgot her name, but she comes back in Rune Factory 2, and she's in her teens, right? She was like a child in the first one, and then she's a teen in the second one, and then they always have a cameo from one game to the other. So I guess that's their cameo from 5, I guess.
Did you see the candidates in this one?
I haven't seen it because when I heard it was like, oh, it's more focused on the battle and less about the farming. I was kind of less interested, but maybe I might be a little bit more interested now. I don't know.
Here, I'll
So,
link it to you in our staff Discord in the voice chat, and then you tell me what looks interesting to you. These designs all look. I generally like the aesthetic of the character designs in this game.
Ooh, these are some good character designs.
ooh, I think
I
I'm
can,
gonna go.
I can already tell, like, some people I know are going to be very unhealthy about some of those men, especially the Oni dude. Like, oh man,
Yeah, people are liking the Oni dude. People are getting down about the fox boy with the samurai garb.
Damn, I'm sure they
people
all.
are gonna like the Ronin woman.
Yeah.
Matsuri.
Yeah,
Um.
Matsuri. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is gonna
So
show
yes.
ignorance on my part, but on other Rune Factory games, do you like position like buildings and like organize like the town layout too?
No,
No,
that's new.
no.
Okay, I didn't know. Like
It's
to
usually
me,
it's usually
that's
farming and life sim, not necessarily building up towns.
yeah, because the small snippet that we get on this little
Yeah.
release date announcement trailer shows some of that. I'm like, oh, is that new or is that like different? Like, so it seems like it might be slightly.
I love how like all these VAs are like question mark except for Hina because she's a returning character.
Yeah. Yeah. But like some people really like the buff dude and the like the samurai buff dude.
Okay, you got me a lot more interested in the game now when I see the new character design. Oh.
Yeah, they seem pretty neat. I definitely like. I was never a big Rune Factory dude, but I'm like after
Always a place to start.
Interesting.
I bought you 4 as a gift.
I know, but I don't have time, child. It's the thing.
I'm gonna sink 300 hours into it, just like I
Let's take
did.
300 hours into it, man. It's that easy. But I mean, it's cool that like this has a release date now. It's a worldwide simultaneous.
Have
You
they
know,
announced
hopefully
anything about Rune Factory 6? I remember they said the Rune Factory 6 is more like a European setting or something, was it?
No, they're definitely waiting for this to come out first. So you definitely will not hear anything about that until after this game's out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that kind of covers us. So it's cool that we're already reaching out into like late April and late May for releases. And especially like with that April date circled for Switch stuff, like who knows Switch 2. I'm gonna keep saying Switch. I need to specify Switch 2. And see, like we have no idea like what volume or style or types of things that are gonna come out of that in terms of summer release for the console itself, holiday release for a bunch of new games. Like big question mark that we're all kind of excited to circle. As for next week, obviously we'll follow up with Adam potentially on Tales of Graces F. Obviously read the review up on the site if you're interested. And obviously join our Discord. Talk about Tales of Graces F if you're playing it for the first time or you're revisiting it. We like to kind of see all that. We'll also likely talk about Ender Magnolia, which will launch within a few days of us recording this. Another thing we haven't talked about yet, the PC release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm not sure if we've actually explicitly got someone on that for the site or anyone off, on their own time is interested in trying that out. So we might have a chance to talk about that maybe, or at least we can see the reception.
Yeah, I'm buying that day 1, even though I'm double dipping. But the thing is, I don't think I would do like a PC port review because last time I did it, everyone's like, "This guy has no idea what the hell he's talking about." It's like, yeah, run fine at my end. So it's like,
it works for me.
Well, I mean,
I like that a lot.
I've used this example before, but I haven't done a PC port review since the original Horizon Zero Dawn because I'm like, it works pretty well on my machine, and then everyone else is like, this port is garbage, and I'm like, oh, I guess maybe I don't have the correct way to look at this.
It's always hard to do that because because people have like different setups. So it's like if you have like top of the line, it's like of course it's gonna work for you, but like for other people who have like lower specs, come on, man, what the fuck? So
yeah, we'll just let Digital Foundry do that.
And there's also some things where people just have different temperaments. Like on that game, I remember it would hitch whenever it would autosave. And to me, I'm like, oh, that's annoying, but I didn't mention it. Like, I'm like, oh, like it's saving it, so it hitches. Like to me, I didn't even give it a second thought. And then like you read other things like I can't believe all this hitching is a huge problem, and I'm like, oh, I just kind of ignored it. Like I don't know. Oh well. But
That's
yeah,
all right.
we'll see the reception to Seven Rebirth. They have been showing a lot of specifically even Mikhail did a article on this, like it's already Steam Deck verified. Of course, it's releasing on Steam and Epic at the same time, which is a step in the right direction. So it'll be interesting to like compare its like how well it does or reception to how well it performs, things like that.
I
So
know that people
talk
have
about
been
that.
tracking the like pre-order numbers on like install base, and it seems like it's tracking better than 16 did. So that's a good sign. I think the fact that Steam Deck verified means a lot more people are going to be picking it up on PC because like 16 super demanding. If this runs on a Steam Deck, obviously more modest PCs shouldn't have any trouble running it. So
Mhm.
guess we'll see.
So yep, those are the sort of things we'll be talking about next week. So obviously follow us, RPG site on any of the social media networks, RPG Space site, and you should be able to find us. If you listen to us on whatever podcast service of choice or on YouTube, leave us a like, a thumbs up, give us a comment or a rating. We do like to see those. Join our Discord, like I said, discord.gg/RPG site. You can join the talk on things like Dynasty Warriors Origins or Tales of Grace's F or any of these upcoming games that you're excited to play. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care, and we'll talk to y'all later.